Alex Hunter sat in the dim glow of his apartment, his fingers loosely gripping the phone in his hand. Another rejection letter, this one from a label that had promised to give him a chance, had arrived that morning. The email was professional, polite, and sterile. "We appreciate the effort, but your sound is not what we're looking for at this time. Best of luck with future endeavors." He read the words over and over, each repetition making them sting more. This wasn't the first rejection. It wasn't even the 10th. But this one felt different. This one felt like the final blow. The ceiling in his small, crumbling apartment seemed to close in around him, the air thick with the weight of unfulfilled dreams. The walls, once filled with the echoes of his passion and excitement, now seemed to mock him. Alex had spent the last 6 years chasing this dream. 6 years of late nights, burnt-out studio sessions, and endless performances in small bars where the crowd barely took notice. He'd been told, "You've got talent," so many times, but talent didn't pay the rent. Talent didn't guarantee anything. Talent was just the starting point. And now it felt like he was miles away from where he needed to be. The bills were piling up. Rent was overdue, and his car, an old rusted relic, was on its last legs. His guitar, the one constant companion through all the hardships, was beginning to show signs of wear. His strings snapped more often than not, and the frets had long since started to erode from the pressure of countless hours of practice. But it wasn't just the material things that were breaking. It was him. His dreams had once been a bright flame, something to keep him moving forward, a source of light in the darkest times. Now that flame was flickering weakly, almost out. He had tried everything, changing his style, collaborating with other artists, pushing his limits. But nothing worked. Every door had closed. Every opportunity had slipped through his fingers. His phone buzzed again. Another email. Another rejection. This time, it wasn't just a label. It was a big-name producer he'd been hoping to work with. The message was clear. "Thanks, but we've decided to move in a different direction." His stomach churned. Alex stood up, pacing the room, his mind spinning with a mixture of frustration and self-loathing. He had spent so much time pretending to be okay, telling himself that tomorrow would be better, that things would turn around. But tomorrow always felt the same. Each day felt like a repeat of the last. Endless practice, emails, and silence. He wondered if he was foolish to keep hoping, foolish to keep believing. Maybe he wasn't cut out for this. Maybe he should just walk away and get a real job. But the thought of giving up made his heart feel like it was being ripped from his chest. Just as he sank back into his chair, burying his face in his hands, his phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't an email. It was a call. He hesitated before answering, wiping the tears from his eyes. "Hello." Alex's voice was hoarse. "Ahem, is this Alex Hunter?" A voice on the other end asked, sounding official but not unkind. "Yeah, this is he," Alex replied, confusion creeping into his tone. "This is Rachel from Ember Recordings. We've listened to your demo, and we'd like to offer you a chance to join us for an initial contract. It's not a huge deal, but we think there's something special about your sound." Alex froze, the weight of the words crashing into him. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Was this real? Was this another empty hope? "Alex, are you there?" Rachel's voice brought him back to the present. Yes, I'm here." I don't know what to say," he stammered, a rush of disbelief flooding through him. "We think you're worth the risk. Let's make this happen." The conversation continued, but Alex could hardly focus on the words. His mind was swirling. He had been ready to give up, convinced that his dream was over. And now, just like that, he had a chance. It wasn't much, but it was something. His heart started to beat faster, a new hope igniting in him. One more step, Alex thought. Just one more step. This could be his chance. This could be the break he'd been waiting for. Alex stood on the edge of the new city, a place where his name was just another whisper in the vast sea of unknown artists. The towering skyline felt both exhilarating and suffocating as he gazed up, gripping the straps of his worn backpack. His old life, the familiar streets of his hometown, felt like a distant memory now. The apartment he'd just signed a lease for, a small, barely furnished one-bedroom, was a far cry from the dreams of luxury he had once imagined. Yet, in that moment, it didn't matter. He had taken a step towards something bigger. But now came the real challenge. He was here to make it. The first few days in the city were a blur. Between unpacking and navigating the maze of unfamiliar streets, Alex found himself facing an overwhelming loneliness. There were no familiar faces, no old friends to rely on for support. His phone buzzed occasionally with messages of encouragement from family, but it wasn't the same as the warm presence of people who had always believed in him. And the reality of the music scene here was nothing like he had imagined. The clubs were packed with talented musicians, young, hungry, and ambitious. But they all had one thing that Alex didn't: a fan base, a reputation. He wasn't anyone here. He was just another hopeful artist with nothing to show but a few demo tracks. The first gig he played was in a dive bar on the edge of town. The crowd was small, mostly drunks and passersby, but Alex played as if his life depended on it. His fingers ached as he strummed, and sweat trickled down his face under the harsh stage lights. But when he finished, there was only polite applause. No one approached him afterward. No one asked for his name or his contact information. The silence in the room, thick with indifference, was almost more painful than the rejection letters. He was so close to calling it quits. That night, after the gig, Alex sat on the steps outside the bar, his guitar case by his side. He pulled his jacket tight against the chill and thought about packing it all in, returning home, admitting defeat. But then his phone buzzed again. It was Rachel from Ember Recordings. "Hey, Alex," her voice crackled through the line. "How's it going? I wanted to check in and see how things were going with the move." Alex hesitated, the weight of his disappointment pressing down on him. "Honestly, it's tough. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I've played a few gigs, but they don't seem to go anywhere. I don't even know if I belong here." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Rachel spoke with an unexpected firmness. "Alex, listen to me. The industry is brutal. But every artist who's made it has gone through this. You can't expect instant results. You just have to keep pushing. Every step counts. Just one more step. That's all you need right now. Just keep moving." Alex let the words sink in. The advice both simple and profound. One more step. For the first time in days, something shifted inside him. Rachel's words gave him the smallest glimmer of hope, the strength to push past the discouragement. He wasn't just playing for the crowd or the label anymore. He was playing for himself. The next day, Alex reached out to a few more venues and scheduled another performance. This time, he wasn't going to let the fear of rejection stop him. He would play as though this was his one shot. And maybe it was. That night, in a small but vibrant cafe, filled with people who were there to listen, not just to drink, Alex took the stage again. This time, his heart wasn't heavy with doubt. He played with everything he had, his voice raw and full of emotion, the guitar strings vibrating with every chord. And for the first time in the city, the crowd didn't just listen. They connected. After his set, a few people approached him. One was a local music blogger, eager to write about his performance. Another was a fellow musician who invited Alex to collaborate on a new project. The energy in the room felt different now, charged with possibility. As he packed up his gear, Alex couldn't help but smile. He still didn't have everything he wanted, but maybe, just maybe, he was on the right path. One more step. That's all it took. And as he walked out into the cool night air, the city no longer felt as foreign, as cold. It felt like a place where dreams, his dream, might actually come true. The next few weeks were a roller coaster of emotions for Alex. The initial excitement of making a name for himself in the new city was quickly overshadowed by the overwhelming reality of what it took to truly succeed. His gigs at small venues started to pick up some traction, and a handful of people recognized his name. But the crowds were still sparse, the pay minimal, and the pressure to constantly improve relentless. He spent his days hustling, sending emails, reaching out to venues, following up with promoters, and his nights playing wherever he could. It wasn't glamorous. The sound equipment was often faulty, and the venues ranged from cozy coffeehouses to barely lit dive bars, where the floor was sticky and the air thick with cigarette smoke. But Alex kept pushing forward, telling himself that every performance, no matter how small, was a step in the right direction. Despite the outward appearance of progress, Alex was slowly falling apart inside. The reality of living in a city that didn't care about him, in an industry that seemed to chew up and spit out talent with no second thought, was taking its toll. He started to doubt his abilities. Was he really good enough? Was this the life he had imagined when he first picked up a guitar all those years ago? It didn't feel like it. It felt like he was treading water, moving but getting nowhere. One late night, after a particularly disheartening set in a noisy club where half the audience had their backs to him, Alex sat alone in his tiny apartment, his guitar resting against the wall. He tried to write new songs, but the words wouldn't come. His mind was filled with questions that didn't have answers. Was he chasing a pipe dream? Was he fooling himself into thinking he could make it? The dream that had once burned brightly inside him now flickered weakly, almost out. His phone buzzed with a message. It was Rachel from Ember Recordings. "Hey Alex, just checking in. How's everything going with your music? Any progress on that new track we talked about?" Alex stared at the screen, the words feeling distant, almost irrelevant. What did she even see in him? Why would she keep reaching out when all he had to show for his efforts were a few small-time performances and a worn-out guitar? He typed back a short reply, trying to sound positive, but the truth was hard to hide. "It's going. All right. Trying to push through, but it's tough. Not sure if I'm cut out for this anymore." There was a long pause before Rachel's reply came through. When it did, it was simple, but it hit him harder than he expected. "Remember why you started, Alex. It's not about the fame or the money. It's about the music. The people who believe in you will find you. But you have to keep going. Just one more step. It's always one more step." The words echoed in his mind long after the conversation ended. Just one more step. How many times had he heard that? How many times had he promised himself that if he could just take that next step, things would get better? But now, in the quiet of his apartment, Alex wondered if he had the strength to take another step. The next day, Alex had an opportunity to perform at a prestigious music showcase, a rare chance to get his music heard by people who mattered. But as the event neared, the fear of failure gripped him. What if he wasn't good enough? What if he bombed in front of an important crowd? It felt like the stakes were higher than ever before, and he wasn't sure if he was ready. On the eve of the showcase, Alex stood in front of the mirror, his reflection staring back at him with uncertainty. For a moment, it felt like everything had led to this point. One moment, one performance, one more chance to prove himself. But the fear, the doubts, they threatened to stop him. Then he remembered Rachel's words. One more step. With a deep breath, Alex grabbed his guitar and made his way to the venue, determined to give everything he had. If it was his last shot, he would go down fighting. One more step. That's all it took. The showcase started as a blur of lights, chatter, and anticipation. Alex arrived at the venue, a sleek and modern space filled with industry professionals, fellow musicians, and fans of the local music scene. He couldn't shake the sense of being out of place, a small fish in a massive pond. He found a quiet corner backstage, pacing in the silence, his guitar case leaning against the wall. The weight of the moment pressed heavily on him. This was it, his big chance. The showcase was an opportunity to be seen by important labels, producers, and influencers, people who could change the course of his career with a single word. The thought both terrified and excited him. What if he failed? What if he wasn't ready? His heart pounded with the fear that had haunted him ever since he first decided to pursue music. The fear of being judged. The fear of being rejected. His mind raced, replaying all the times he doubted himself. The gigs that hadn't gone as planned. The moments of doubt that had crept in when the silence in the room felt louder than his music. The internal battle had been relentless. He could feel the weight of every failure, every moment of hesitation, and it all came crashing down on him now. His phone buzzed again. It was Rachel, the steady presence in his life through all of this. "You ready?" Her message read. Alex stared at the screen, the words "ready" feeling like an impossible stretch. He typed back quickly, the vulnerability in his words stark and raw. "I don't know if I can do this. What if I mess up?" He waited, his chest tight with anxiety. The response came after a moment, simple yet profound. "You're more than ready, Alex. Just trust yourself. One more step. You've got this." For a long time, Alex just stood there, the phone clutched in his hand. Trust himself. It seemed so simple in theory, but right now it felt like an impossible task. What if his nerves betrayed him? What if his hands shook on the guitar, his voice cracked? What if he failed in front of everyone? Finally, the call for his performance came. Alex grabbed his guitar, his stomach twisted in knots. As he walked onto the stage, the bright lights hit him, blinding him momentarily. He could barely make out the faces in the audience, but he knew they were watching, judging, waiting. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. His mind raced, the doubts swirling like a storm. His fingers hesitated on the strings. Was this how it was all supposed to feel? His pulse thudded in his ears. The weight of every moment that led him to this point bore down on him. And for a split second, he almost froze. But then something in him shifted. He remembered why he started this journey, why he picked up a guitar in the first place. The music, the soul of it, had always been what kept him going. Not the accolades, not the recognition, but the pure connection between himself and the notes. He promised himself to never lose that. With a steadying breath, he strummed the first chord. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. The melody filled the air, raw and real. As he sang the first verse, his voice cracked, but it didn't matter. The imperfections added to the authenticity, to the emotion behind the song. The more he played, the more the nerves melted away. For the first time in weeks, Alex felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The crowd was quiet at first, reserved, unsure. But by the time he reached the final chorus, something shifted. People were listening. They were leaning in. And just as the last note hung in the air, there was a beat of silence. Then, applause. It wasn't thunderous. It wasn't the raucous cheer of a packed concert hall. But it was real. It was genuine. For the first time in a long time, Alex didn't care if he was perfect. He cared that he was himself, that he was playing his music, raw and unfiltered. As he stepped off the stage, his heart was still racing, but something had changed. The fear, the doubt. They were still there, but they no longer held power over him. The battle wasn't won yet, but for the first time, Alex understood what it meant to fight for his dreams, even when it felt impossible. As he packed up his gear, a sense of quiet triumph settled over him. He had faced the darkest hour, and he had taken one more step, and that was enough. The days following the showcase felt like a blur of excitement and nervous anticipation. Alex had been on a high ever since stepping off the stage, but the reality of what came next began to settle in. His performance, though not perfect, had drawn attention. A few people had approached him after the set, local music bloggers, aspiring artists, and one or two event organizers who offered him additional gigs. He wasn't quite a star, but for the first time in years, it felt like his dream was within reach. Despite the small wins, Alex's phone stayed silent for the most part. He had been waiting for the call, the one that would open the door to a world of opportunities. Rachel from Ember Recordings had been supportive, checking in after every step, but the label hadn't yet offered him anything concrete. And the nagging doubt that had followed him for months was still there, lingering like a shadow. Was he just another artist in a crowded room? Another face in a sea of talent, all fighting for the same spot? Then, one evening, the call came. It was Rachel again. "Hey Alex," she said, her voice a little more upbeat than usual. "How's everything going? I've been hearing some good things about your performance." Alex's heart skipped. It's been all right. A few more gigs, a couple of opportunities, but nothing huge yet. She paused before continuing. "Well, I'm calling to let you know that we've been talking internally, and we want to take things further. Ember would like to offer you a trial contract. It's not a full deal yet, but it's a start. We think there's potential in your music, and we'd like to work with you to see where we can take it." Alex felt the room around him blur as his pulse quickened. A trial contract. His mind struggled to process the words. This was it. His shot. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was a chance. A real chance to take his music to the next level. He had been waiting for a moment like this, but now that it had arrived, he wasn't sure how to respond. "Alex, you still there?" "Yeah," he stammered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I'm here. Oh, wow. That's amazing. I don't even know what to say." Rachel laughed, a warm sound that eased the tension in his chest. "You don't have to say anything. Just let us know if you're in. We're excited to see where this can go." For the first time in months, Alex allowed himself to fully breathe. He had come so close to giving up so many times, convinced that he wasn't good enough, that he wasn't cut out for this world. But now, with one phone call, everything had changed. That night, after the conversation ended, Alex sat in the silence of his apartment, staring out the window at the city below. He thought about the journey so far, the late nights, the doubts, the rejection letters, the small gigs. He thought about the dark moments when he had wanted to quit, when the weight of the world had seemed too heavy to bear. He had come so close to walking away. But now he had a chance. The offer from Ember Recordings wasn't the end. It wasn't even the beginning of the end. It was just a step, one more step in a long journey that had barely begun. But it was the step he had been waiting for, the one that made all the struggles, all the hardships, feel worth it. With a deep breath, Alex picked up his guitar and strummed a few chords. He closed his eyes, letting the music flow through him, feeling it like never before. This wasn't just about the contract. It was about the music, the thing that had kept him going all these years, even when nothing else seemed to make sense. One more step, he thought. That's all it takes. One more step to keep moving forward. And this time, he knew exactly where he was headed. The days that followed the phone call from Ember Recordings were a whirlwind. Alex had never felt more alive. There was a mix of excitement and overwhelming pressure as he reviewed the trial contract and prepared for the next steps. A trial contract wasn't the full deal, but it was something. A tangible opportunity to show Ember what he was capable of. And for the first time, the promise of his dream felt real. The road ahead was still uncertain, but it was a road that Alex was willing to walk. He spent hours in the studio, working on new music and refining the sound that had gotten him to this point. The creative process was both exhilarating and exhausting. Alex was used to writing songs on his own, but now there were producers, engineers, and other professionals involved. He was no longer just an independent artist. He was part of a team, and that shift came with its own set of challenges. The expectations were high, the deadlines tight. But Alex found himself energized by the possibility of something bigger than he had ever imagined. However, with success came sacrifices. He had less time for the small gigs he used to stay afloat. The relationships he had built in the city, those few friendships, The people who had supported him from the beginning began to feel distant. There were moments when Alex missed the simplicity of his old life, when the only thing that mattered was making music for the sake of it, without the looming pressure of a contract or the weight of a career. But he pushed those thoughts aside. He was on the verge of something important, and he couldn't afford to let distractions pull him away. Rachel continued to check in regularly, offering guidance and advice. She was a steady presence, reminding him to stay grounded even as things started to move at a faster pace. "You're doing great, Alex," she told him during one of their late-night calls. "But don't forget why you're here. This isn't just about getting signed or making it big. It's about the music. It's about your voice. Never lose sight of that." Her words struck a chord with Alex. It was so easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of everything. Label meetings, social media, managing expectations. But Rachel had been right from the start. This journey wasn't about the fame, or the recognition, or the labels. It was about the music. It had always been about the music. The studio sessions became a time of renewal for Alex, a place where he could reconnect with his passion. The songs he wrote during that time were some of his best yet. They were raw, vulnerable, and full of truth. He poured every ounce of himself into each note, each lyric, and as the tracks started to take shape, Alex realized something that had eluded him for years. He wasn't chasing success. He was chasing something deeper, something that had always been inside of him, but had taken years to understand. Months passed, and the trial period with Ember Recordings drew to a close. Alex had proven himself. The label was happy with the progress, the direction of his music, and the energy he brought to the table. The full contract offer came through, and with it, the realization that his dreams were no longer just dreams. They were his reality. But as the final papers were signed, Alex took a moment to reflect. He had been through so much. Endless doubt, countless rejections, and moments where the path had seemed unclear. But through it all, he had kept going, step by step. Each setback, each challenge, had only made him stronger. And now, as he stood on the brink of this new chapter, he understood more than ever. The journey was the reward. The steps, the hard, painful, uncertain steps, were what had shaped him into the artist he was today. With a deep breath, Alex walked into the next chapter of his life, ready for whatever came next. One more step, always.